What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be giving my thoughts and review on Fortnite Chapter 6 Season 1. As always, if you guys do find this video to be informative or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, and comment down below what you would rank this season out of 10. Also, when I do my reviews, I'm not going to cover every single aspect of the season entirely. I'm just going to go over what I thought was good, what I thought was bad, my overall opinion on the season, and then a number ranking. Overall, though, before we get too deep into it, I think that this season was very good and probably my second favorite season 1 or start to a chapter ever. Chapter 4 season 1 I probably did enjoy more than this season, but I definitely enjoyed this more than the start of Chapter 5. And my opinion on Fortnite and kind of where it's going and the potential of the game over the course of the next year is a lot higher now compared to where it was a year ago. Like if you compare like end of Chapter 5 Season 1 to end of Chapter 6 Season 1, I'm a lot more hopeful for the remainder of Chapter 6 than I was for the remainder of Chapter 5 at this time. So I think that is very good, and I think this was a very good start to the chapter. What I liked about this season, there's a lot of things. I really enjoy the Chapter 6 map. It's not the greatest map of all time, probably, to me. Like, that'll always be probably Chapter 1. But I think the Chapter 6 map is very solid. And one of the things I really liked about this map is how much depth it had. Like, how many little hidden spots and hidden details there were on the map. Like, the vault at Nightshade Forest, the little cave at Magic Mosses. Eventually, we got several changes throughout the course of the season. We got like a new little extra room added at Flooded Frogs. And then that POI was also unflooded. We got the little underground section added to Masked Meadows, which I think made the POI a lot better with a guaranteed Void Mask. And then there was also the Kappa Kappa Pickle Factory that came, about halfway through the season. It's not the greatest POI of all time, but I really like mid-season map changes. Even when it is just little things like, adding that extra spot to Flooded Frogs or adding that little underground section to Masked Meadows. Little things like that are some of my favorite Fortnite updates, and I feel like that those things go a long way in kind of freshening up the game and making the map feel more like alive, I guess, in a way. And I feel like that's something that early Fortnite, like Chapter 1, did very well. It felt like the map was always developing and changing, and I feel like Chapter 6 did that quite well, probably better than any other Fortnite chapter up to this point. So I think the map is very good. The amount of depth the map has with all those little hidden things is good. The amount of changes we got, they weren't, massive shakeups to the entirety of the map, but it was just little changes that helped the map feel different, like somewhat week to week. Another thing I really liked about this season is I think the medallion balance was a lot better than any of the other seasons we had in Chapter 5. You guys have watched me for a while and seen my, Chapter 5 season review videos. I was not the biggest fan of medallions, and I was not the biggest fan of having them kind of dictate the pacing of your game from the moment the match starts. With like the Grimgate medallion, it felt like you kind of had to land at or around there. The Emma Frost scan medallion was very good. A lot of the Chapter 5 seasons had like that one medallion that was just really good. And the way Chapter 6 works is the best medallion was on the island, which spawns in 4th zone. So you could play the match however you want up to that point, and it made island very important. I know some people didn't like this medallion because it is very good. When I said medallion balance, some people were probably like, what the heck are you talking about? It's so unbalanced. But what I mean is like the start of the game wasn't revolving around medallions from the get-go. Imagine if that invisibility medallion was at like Lost Lake, and you could get it off spawn. Like, everybody would be landing there, right? And even if you didn't want to land at Lost Lake, you'd probably be landing around it and trying to third party. The fact that the best medallion was just on island meant that you could play however you wanted up to that point. When island spawns, you're probably going to go there anyways, and then you got like an actual really good reward for going to island. So I liked that. And then the ammo medallion I also thought was quite good, but it wasn't like a, you need to get this good. It's nice to have, but it wasn't that OP. So I feel like having a balanced kind of mid, not that great medallion to start the game, and then a really good medallion coming in on island was a lot better balance than just having several medallions on the map and then one of them is just godlike and you kind of need to land there, or you're heavily encouraged or incentivized to land there. So I think the medallion balance was very good this season. Another thing that was really good is that there was lots of mobility, and that made the game really fast-paced and fun to play. We had the Void Mask, the Typhoon Blade, the Kinetic Blade, shockwaves. There was a lot of mobility this season. We'll get to the Typhoon Blade later on when we get into the things I didn't like that much, but I do enjoy having a lot of mobility items in the game, and I feel like it just makes Zero Build a lot more fun to play. I liked that there weren't weapon mods. Whether it's hit scan or projectile, I'm not the biggest, one way or the other. I was pretty fine with projectile, and I'm fine with hit scan being back. But my biggest complaint for Chapter 5 was just that how, not necessarily important weapon mods were, but how much better the weapons felt when I had mods that I actually wanted versus mods I didn't want. And if you guys remember in Chapter 5, you needed to get mods at a certain point in the game when the bunkers opened for the most part. And it felt like for most of the match up to that point, I was just using things I don't like to use as much. And so getting rid of weapon mods, I personally was very happy with. The train was actually worth going for on this map. Again, Chapter 5 added the train, and in my opinion, it was a very nothing addition. I don't think it really affected the game that much. I think it was a very useless addition, but having a mythic that you can get by capturing the train, I think was a nice little addition to the game. Landing on the train wasn't my favorite thing to do still, but I know there's definitely people out there that loved landing on the train and getting that mythic hollow AR, and it is like a nice little give and take where if you land on the train, you get a really good AR, but you're also not getting as much loot up to that point as someone who just landed at a POI, I feel like. And then also your game is less stable because the train is moving around and, who knows what other people at different POIs along the way are doing. So I kind of like how they set up the train this season. I think that was cool. I think the Winterfest update was also fine. I'm not the biggest fan, or I guess not really fan. I just don't care that much about the holiday events. If Winterfest is not that great, I don't care that much, but a lot of people do. And I think I saw a lot of people that care a lot about Winterfest typically saying that this year's Winterfest was good. So that is nice. It was a fine update to me, but that really isn't make or break for the entire season, in my opinion. And then I think the loot pool was mostly good too. I enjoyed using the Hollow Twister AR. I'll talk more about it later on in the video in the bad section. The Sentinel Pump, I enjoyed using. My biggest complaints for Fortnite seasons is typically going to be, or not even complaints, but like one thing that really affects me enjoying the season a lot is going to be the shotgun meta. And the fact that the pump shotgun was good to use and enjoyable to use definitely made me enjoy this season a lot more than I would have if like the auto shotgun was the best shotgun. So I enjoyed the Sentinel Pump. I enjoyed the Hollow Twister AR. I enjoyed the mobility. The loot pool overall was good in my opinion. Now we're going to get into the bad section, and I have two kind of main points. That is going to be the Typhoon Blade and just the meta overall of this season never really changing that much. Oh, I forgot to talk about in the good section. I thought the Godzilla update was good as well. As far as the mid-season update goes, having a giant boss that spawned in that you had to kind of damage to get that medallion, it did really warp the early game, which is something I talked about not liking as much. But the thing about it being a temporary event, I'm kind of more lenient on that. If Godzilla was here from the moment the season started and, throughout the entirety of the season, that would have not been that great to me. But for a late mid-season update, I liked the addition of Godzilla. It definitely made the game more fun to play. I really enjoyed the Dash Medallion. One thing I would change, though, is when they do these temporary updates with like a % chance to happen, because if you guys didn't play during the Godzilla update, it wasn't guaranteed to spawn. There were times where it was 100% spawn rate. They would kind of change the spawn rate over time. And we had the Doom Island update at the end of Chapter 5 Season 4, or kind of the midway of Chapter 5 Season 4. I think the Godzilla one was done better. I liked that Godzilla spawned earlier in the match than Doom Island did, and it seemed like the spawn rate of it was a bit better. I also feel like playing against somebody using Godzilla was not as annoying as playing against somebody using Doom. And then there also was more of a reward for fighting Godzilla because you got that medallion, whereas Doom, you just got Doom out of the match, if I remember correctly. One thing I wish they would do for these little % chance updates is make it 100% for like the first day or two. A lot of times what they do with these is they have a really low spawn rate to start, and then over time they increase the spawn rate. And they probably do this because they want people to play a bunch to get to see the content. But I feel like, especially as a content creator, but even as a player, when the update drops and you just play, like the Godzilla update, I played 4 hours that day and saw it one time. Like that's kind of frustrating. And for the average player who doesn't have that much time to play, there's a chance you don't even get to see Godzilla or experience that update until like a few days in when they make it 100% spawn rate, and then it isn't even that hype anymore. So I feel like if they made it 100% spawn rate for like the first day or two, then kind of turned it down a bit, and then maybe turned it up again at the end, that would make it a lot more, interesting and exciting, especially on day one. But, they probably intentionally do this to farm more playtime out of people. But overall, I thought the Godzilla update was good. Wasn't my favorite kind of late mid-season update ever, but I thought it was fine. And then there also wasn't any really just long stagnant period with no updates during this season. I felt like the flow of content was fine. It wasn't always the greatest, like adding the lock-on pistol or the Ranger AR to the game doesn't really change how the game plays out that much, but there were updates week to week, which I thought was good. Now we're going to get into the bad stuff, and the biggest problem for this season for myself and many others is going to be the Typhoon Blade. And this is a difficult thing to talk about because based on reading comments about this item, it seems like a lot of people have no idea what the problem with this item is or what most people are complaining about when they complain about it. What I didn't like about the Typhoon Blade was the slash ability. It is activated by L2 on controller. It's probably left click on mouse and keyboard, but the extra attack. The regular swing I don't care about. And this is why I think there's like a confusion, because I'll read comments of people being like, how could anybody complain about the Typhoon Blade? It's not that bad. You just stand still and shoot your AR and they're an easy kill. And I agree. If someone's using the regular melee attack, it's no big deal. But if you fight somebody, and my guess is that the people commenting stuff like that aren't often playing against good players with the Typhoon Blade. When you're playing against good players with the Typhoon Blade, they're not using the regular melee most of the time. They're just using that slash attack to get 90 damage and send you flying and then end up ARing you. And that, I think, was the problem with this item. The regular melee, not a big deal. If you fight people using that, they're usually not that big of a deal, and I agree, they're pretty easy to deal with. But a good player utilizing the slash well was a struggle to play against because it was very inconvenient or unlikely to dodge the slash, and that is what I would change. If I could change anything with the Typhoon Blade, or if I could have during the course of the season, making that slash attack more dodgeable, I think would have made the item less frustrating to play against. So if you guys didn't know, that slash attack had a range of 14 meters. The area of effect in front of your character was very forgiving and much larger than the regular swing. Like, they didn't have to be that accurate with it. And then also, like I said, it's 14 meters. And then also it would hit you kind of around structures sometimes. And so, because it was an area of effect. So if I could have nerfed this item, I would have reduced the range on that slash attack and reduced the area of effect of it. So the person using it has to be actually more accurate with it and actually on you. And then also, I don't know if this is something that could be coded or whatever, but making it to where if there's like kind of any structure between you and the sword user, you just don't get hit by it. And that would make it more dodgeable in a fight. If you know someone's going for it, you can try to get to cover, ring around the rosies around the cover and try to, get them to waste it and then fight them that way. It just felt very cheesy, and it felt like there wasn't much counterplay to somebody using it. They just jump on you and use it, and the only real counterplay you had was to use a sword of your own to hopefully avoid that fall damage. I think they also could have made the cooldown for it longer and made it affect the durability more, but we'll get to that later on in the video as well, because durability is something I want to talk about. But overall, that was my biggest complaint with the season, and as I said, it seemed like a lot of people weren't playing against this because they're saying it's so easy to kill them, just stand still and AR them. If you stand still and AR someone using the slash, you're getting sent across the map, potentially taking fall damage, and probably just getting beamed. So that was a problem with the sword, I think, was just how effective the slash was and how little room you had as a player to like dodge and deal with it, aside from using your own mobility. But that kind of causes problems otherwise. If someone just jumps on you and do it, you don't have time to shockwave sometimes, or you don't have time to void mask. So that was my biggest complaint with the season. I think also the fact that there was no significant meta change this season was a problem. And like I said earlier, I enjoyed the Hollow Twister AR, but that gun was overpowered, and the fact that it never got nerfed to like actually have more recoil and be harder to use, I think was a problem. And that is coming from somebody who uses it. It was just very easy to use. And I think had it gotten nerfed to the point where it was actually harder to use and took more skill, then maybe we would have seen some actual meta shifts during the course of the season. The buffs they gave to the Oni shotgun, I think, were quite good. It definitely made it a lot more viable when they improved the fire rate of it. The auto shotgun never really felt that great. I enjoyed the Sentinel the entire time, but I think some of the Oni buffs definitely made it a lot more viable. But overall, the meta just kind of stayed the same the entire season, and that's kind of unfortunate whenever that happens. And then the final thing I want to talk about is durability. I don't have a problem with this. A lot of people hate this and feel like it's the worst thing ever added. I think it's a good addition to the game. The reason the kinetic blade only having 21 uses before it breaks, I think is still a lot. And it's just like an extra way to balance these mobility items. Personally, I don't think you should be able to just spam a mobility item constantly and not have any consequences with that and not have any sort of concern about like, should I be using it here? Or, you know, getting eliminations in that time. Because the way the durability works, and even the charges of the Void Mask, if you eliminate somebody, theirs drops fully loaded. So basically, with the Void Mask, you just need to get an elimination on somebody who's using a mask before you use 15 of your charges. And it's like, if you use 15 charges without getting an elimination, what are you doing, you know? And so that's kind of how I see the durability change. It just kind of makes it to where you need to get eliminations and you need to get refreshes, and not just spam your mobility item constantly without any consequence. So I think durability was a fine change, and it's something that can be balanced, you know? If it, like, the kinetic blade doesn't need to have the durability removed. Maybe they could have, you know, increased the amount of durability it has or decreased the amount that one use uses to where you get more uses per blade. But I think overall as a concept, having some sort of limiting factor and making it to where you need to think about using your mobility, I think it's fine. And as long as you're able to get eliminations, it really shouldn't be a problem with you. And this is one of the better ways to balance an item, I think. And it's something that they didn't really touch at all during the season, if I remember correctly. But with the Typhoon Blade, imagine if they made that slash use like 20% of the Typhoon Blade's charge. That's excessive. You would only get 5 slashes per blade, unless you get those refreshes like I was talking about. But it would make it to where the person would have to think about, should I use a slash here? And not just like, I'm going to use a slash here because I have the blade and there's no thought behind it. So I feel like if they made the slash use a lot of durability, it would have definitely made the item more limited and made it more something that people have to actually think about using while keeping it good. Even the idea I had about making the slash more dodgeable, I think you can keep the item good, but just require more out of the person using it or give more room for the person playing against it to play. I wasn't saying it needs to be killed and nerfed into the ground, even though I am someone who does not enjoy having melee weapons in the game at all. Like, people like it, obviously. I just think some nerfs of making it more dodgeable or more kind of something the person using it has to think about would have made the season a lot more enjoyable. And I think durability could have been one of those things. I'm not really against the durability as a concept, and I think as long as you're getting eliminations, it's really not going to be a factor for you. And that, you know, adds some benefit to fighting, which I think overall is a good thing. Even though those were my bad things, and the Typhoon Blade was a large negative, in my opinion. Like, it just became very boring to play against. I don't like melee weapons, and I don't like items that kind of, like, make it annoying to move your character. And when you just get flung across the map with the sword, you can't really move the way you want, you know? So that's why it was an item that tilted me a lot. But overall, I still think this season was incredible. I really enjoyed it. And like I said, it's probably my second favorite season 1 ever. And I'm very hopeful and excited to see what we continue to get in Chapter 6. I think it could be a very good chapter. Definitely better than Chapter 5 for sure. If I had to rank this season out of 10, I think I would give it like an 8. If there was no Typhoon Blade, I think this season would be top 5, maybe top 3 for me. Like, I really, really enjoyed this season. It's just that one item kind of held it back, but that's usually how Fortnite goes. So it's always that one thing. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of this season and what you would rank it out of 10. As always, if you guys did find this to be interesting or informative, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.